Hi, is that working for everyone? So far, so good? Okay, hi, so I run TRANScend. Um, yes, okay, so I started in 2018 when I just finished uni. We launched it at the Trans Pride Brighton pop-up art show, which, yeah, was an incredible space with lots of trans artists. Yeah, sorry. So I run it online through Instagram. So the format is that I'll put up a theme, people send things into the email, and then we put it all together, which has its benefits in that it's like often like really international. We can kind of get submissions from anywhere. We don't have to be like physically linked to have that kind of trans community. But it also is frustrating being reliant on like Instagram algorithms and things. And we can talk a bit about that later. But it's definitely like a work in progress. I think I've had like 3 main issues out, and I still have a lot that I want to figure out about how to make it run better. Yeah, so it's definitely evolving, which I think is kind of the point of zines maybe anyway, that they don't finish. um, yeah, so the reasons I started it were that I was studying art history and film studies at Sussex and found it so frustrating to try and talk about anything trans in those contexts. So much of trans academia is written by cis people, and often cis people who like don't know a trans person, and you can just tell that from how it's written. There are trans spaces within academia, like the Transgender Studies Quarterly, which does do amazing work, but I think they do accept work by cis people about trans people. And there is a lot of stuff about the structure of academia where you've got a word count, so you can't explain, like if you're spending part of the word count explaining what transness is to a cis audience, you don't have a lot of words left to say anything else interesting. And there's things like the time delays where it's always a bit out of sync with like the conversations that trans people are having actively in bars, in kind of social spaces, and that like more current aspect to it, which is something that zines can do really well because you could put it out overnight if you need to. You get a lot more immediacy and conversation with the community. And also just like making sense for a cis audience is tiring in trans academia, but you need to do that because of how academia is structured. And I think trans people don't have to make sense to cis people as a general take. And also this is something that I mainly know about through conversations with Ciswana, but there are also a lot of limitations to fine art spaces in terms of like having to have new ideas to obtain more funding, this kind of pressure of like a finished product in a gallery show where you don't get feedback and there's not that process of evolving and changing your ideas as they develop. Yeah. So those are kind of reasons that I didn't want to use those existing formats, and wanted to make a zine for trans people instead. There's also just such an amazing history of trans zines, like going way back to the 30s where trans people were in Berlin were writing about their own experiences for other trans people. And again, if you read academia about the history of trans people in print, they talk about the 50s and like cis American mainstream publications talking about Christine Jorgensen, which is just so far from the truth. And I think that like own voices approach is giving you so much more information. This was like a magazine where it was kind of like advice columns, scientific articles, and just like personal essays and fiction. And I think that's also something that is important about zines as a format, is there is no like genre constraints. It can be a bit of everything, and I think that is useful when we're talking about anything as big as like trans community. Yeah, there's a few other ones here, like Lou Sullivan's zine from the 70s were very important in organizing across a larger space of like trans guys. And Gender Trash from Toronto in the 90s is also incredible, just in that it does do everything. Like there's any format of what you want in there, you can find it. And there's also this one, Queer Mutiny from Brighton, which is exciting just because it's like, it's queer, but it's also very anti-capitalist. It's from like about 2006, I think. And it's really exciting to read because it has that thing of being like an immediate report on what a community is going through, as opposed to anything academic where it's got that distance, it's got peer review, it's had to go through like a lengthy process. This is really like, here's what we did last week. It was illegal. And I love that. Yeah, that's kind of the end of it. TRANScend 3 is coming out soon and the submissions are still open. It's about time and whatever that means to you. And we do particularly welcome, I say we, it's just me, but we do particularly welcome applications. It's only trans people, but especially trans people of color, disabled trans people, and everyone else who's marginalized in our community. Okay, that's me done. Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, looking forward to asking you lots of questions. Amber, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sorry, my internet was playing up a little bit, so I had to come off. I didn't prepare a presentation. Oh, I think, did I freeze again?
No, you didn't freeze. You're fine. No, you froze now. You're back. Good.
Oh, sorry. I didn't prepare a presentation, but I'll show ROOT-ed Zines website page as a nice as a visual. And so I'll just get that up now. Yeah, okay. So I'm the co-founder of ROOT-ed Zine, which is a quarterly magazine for people of colour in the northwest of England. And this is our website. So yeah, we do physical zines every quarter. So we've just released an issue, I think last month, I think, in collaboration with Homotopia, and it was a cutie park zine. And then we had people from all over the country actually contribute to that. So we usually just keep it to the northwest. We're quite specific to try and get representation for the northwest community, because a lot of discussion and art for people of colour or opportunities are usually based down south. So yeah, we're quite specific with that. And we have submissions. We recently were able to start to pay people to submit into the zine, which was a really huge thing for us, because we understand free labour. We've gone through it ourselves and we understand it's not the best way, but we're grateful that we're able to pay people to submit to the zine. And we've also got a profiles page, because we're really passionate about, we go into a lot of spaces and they're like, oh, we couldn't find an artist of colour to work on us with this. So it's kind of like, oh, we just direct people to here, because there are people in the northwest of all different backgrounds and ethnicities. So it's kind of just an excuse at this point. And I'll show you some of the past zines that we did. So the first ever issue of ROOT-ed we did was, it included an interview with Devaney Hamid after she just won the Turner Prize. And that kind of helped create like a huge buzz around the zine, because so it started with just me and Fuzia. We were both students at Liverpool Hope University. We were studying fine art and we were the only Black students there. And we decided to collaborate on a piece of artwork, and it just kind of formed quite like really organically into a zine. And we tweeted Devaney, we was like, can you please be in the zine? And she really kindly responded, and we got to interview her. And I think that was what gave us a platform, and people like they trusted us. Like I think from that we got like our galleries were asking us to sell the zine in their spaces and stuff like that. And so our next issue is coming out in January, I believe, and it's all about joy. So I feel like that's a nice end to this little section. But yeah, because I think after this year we all need a bit of joy.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, both really amazing projects, and I have a set of questions to ask both of you that hopefully will help everybody here get a bit of more of an inside view of like how you function and what your hopes for the future are. So the first question is, when were you first introduced to DIY zine making? Do you want to go first, Saskia?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think it was when I was at uni, probably like on Tumblr, if I'm honest, and like just that big contrast between what I was kind of seeing these conversations online and like, yeah, in like physical spaces compared to the kind of like very sensible academic spaces was what kind of drew me to it. Like it just felt a lot more energetic.
Did you do it on your own, or did you do it with others?
I did it on my own. I mean, it's always been like open submission, so that's I always want to bring people together. But I am the only one running it, which is maybe why it's so chaotic.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, I just want to say there's two of us running Rooted and it's still very chaotic. Yeah, I think I was in university when I first came across even just the term zine. I feel like I was a bit late to the party. It was just after like me and Fuzia was like, yeah, we want to collaborate on something. And in that research process of like trying to figure out what we want to collaborate on, I think it's when we stumbled across zines and we were like, yeah, this is actually like the perfect format to express the things that we want to express and collaborate and to raise awareness and to apply pressure. Like it just felt like the best thing for us.
It's interesting that you both found zines at university. What role do you feel zines play in building and documenting the lives of marginalised communities? Do you want to start, Amber, this time?
Yeah. I think it is such a significant but underrated role that zines play. And I think it is the structure of them. There's not really this hierarchy, or I think we're very conscious of it. And I think a lot of zines are led by the people in that community that the zine is trying to serve and engage with. And that just allows for vulnerability to be present in the works that people submit to us at times. It feels so special to just be able to read such honest and vulnerable pieces of writing or pieces of artwork. And I think it is because the structure of the zine directly represents and reflects the community that engaging with the zine, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree so much with that about like the honesty and that kind of vulnerability of it. I think that's really important. I guess I come at things from like a very historical approach, and I think that is like they are the most useful documents of a community at a time that you weren't there for. And I think we really can't rely on like museums and mainstream press to make accurate documents of our communities. And that is something that's so important to be doing ourselves as things happen from like a historical perspective.
Completely agree. So the next question is, when curating your zines, how do you go about ensuring that a diverse pool of people are represented? Let's go there.
I don't mind. So yeah, this is something that me and Fusia really care about, and especially because we're really conscious that we're both light-skinned Black women and cautious that we're not like, we don't want to just put out content or zines that reflect just us, and we don't want to just attract people that look like us, because that I don't think that would help in any way. So one thing we did start to do is do a equality form, and I don't know if it is the best way to go about it. I think there's other ways, but that was just one way for us to track, like, are we actually diverse? Are we actually like reaching different communities? Is the pages of the zine filled with all aspects of like ethnic minority stories and perspectives? But one thing that we are trying to do, hopefully soon, is so Lubaina Hamid, who was the person who was in the first issue, she very, very kindly has donated some money to Rooted, and I think we're able to get like we're going to call them like Rooted ambassadors, and we want like to be able to ensure that we are going. So the Northwest as well is there's like the major cities like Liverpool and Manchester, and they tend to be quite diverse. And then I think there's like places like Lancaster and Morecambe, and like just really small places that I don't think we're reaching well enough. So we're trying to be diverse in terms of the areas that we're reaching, and as well as the people that we're reaching. Yeah.
Great, that sounds really interesting. Sas?
I feel like this is something that I have not got the hang of yet. It's definitely still in progress. It's open submission and I don't ever turn down a submission. But because it's so reliant on it's so online. And I think that does mean that it's a lot of like really algorithmic things where we get like the same people that get reached every time, which is really frustrating. And also because it's free at the moment, I don't have the money to commission anyone, which does mean it only is like people can submit if they have enough free time and energy to do so, which is obviously really limiting. Yeah, I do notice that I get mostly like white and transmasculine people submitting. So I am hoping when we're allowed outside again to make it more of a physical space where it can happen in a bar or something where people already are. They don't have to go looking for it. And like making more of a community around the zine instead of it being like really spread out by chance online.
Yeah, I was going to say that's something that we found as well when, at the start of making the zine. We were just reaching the same people over and over again. And we were looking back at the covers of the zine, and a lot of them were Black people, or even more specifically light-skinned Black people. And we were like, oh, this is like we have to do better. And I think it's definitely hard. We tried to make a Facebook group at one point because we were like, there's people out there, we just have to reach them. That kind of flopped. Facebook groups actually take a lot of work to kind of upkeep and like just keep, I don't know, just they're a lot of work, but yeah, I feel you on that.
I like suggest Discord over Facebook anytime because yeah, it's better, just saying. Next question is, did you face any I don't know why I wrote that word because I can't pronounce it. Did you face any difficulties while creating your zine that you didn't expect to?
I don't know if it's unexpected, but I have ADHD and keeping to a deadline to release a zine is impossible. And I think that is something that is very, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate, like, because you do have a responsibility once people have given you their stuff, they really want you to put it out there. And I think that is something really difficult, is that you can't like do zines as a full-time job a lot of the time. And so making that work around other things and sticking to like a regular release schedule is kind of wild.
Yeah, I found that just brings me back. There was one point I was working full-time and then freelancing and then doing ROOT-ed Zine. And I remember just thinking, like, I don't get how people do this. Like it just felt like so. And I think as well, when you're part of the community that your zine is for, so like sometimes some of the like you'll be reading through work and it's like, well, that's like bringing up things that I didn't even know I like went through, or like it's bringing like perspectives, and like it sometimes I'm like, do I have to put a timeline on making a zine, because it feels like such a special thing, and it has such potential to, I don't know, it just feels sometimes like the kind of scenes in themselves are just unique. And what if I froze?
That's so much, yeah.
Amber, you froze again.
Oh, sorry.
You're back.
I can't remember what I was saying, but yeah, zines kind of they're not traditional, so I was think maybe I should not be so strict on myself with timelines. But I get what you mean. You do feel like you have to be, because people have trusted you with their work. So but yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges we faced when we started was a lot of people were quite kind of a bit rude, I guess. Yeah, we'll say rude. They were really rude about how we were just for people of color, a lot of people challenged us on that. They're like, oh, if we were to make a zine just for white people, that would be classed as racist. So why do you think you can do a zine just for people of color? But then I think because we really wanted the zine to like have an impact, and so I think we kind of took on that advice or criticism, or I don't know what's it called, and we kind of took it on for like a few seconds, and then we realized, but actually no one's upset that it's just for the Northwest. Like no one ever questioned that the zine was like, we don't accept people from London, from outside of the Northwest. And then so that kind of revealed people's intentions, that they're low-key racist, I think. And then there's a lot of like tokenism as well, and I think that happens when you are in a city like Liverpool, that I think there's like 3% Black and minority ethnic people in the city. So like there's like, I always feel like there's that one token Black person in all the gallery spaces, and I feel like Rooted was becoming that a bit. And then there was a lot of free labor that we had to go through, with like people kind of using their name and power to get us to do things so they could, I guess, tick a box. Yeah, so there was a lot of things that we didn't realize were challenges when we were going through them, but on reflection, we realized that they were quite challenging. You're on mute.
Definitely to be on mute. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's something that we talk about quite a bit when people from minoritized backgrounds try to make their own thing. Then like other people and bigger organizations try to like capitalize on that on some way. It's really hard to navigate when you're especially doing something unpaid and trying to get your stuff out there. So the next question is, what's been the most rewarding part of creating your zine? Saskia?
I think it is just this thing of bringing other people's work together that's really exciting to me. And it is something that I've realized I've been missing, because I haven't printed as many. I think the first issue I like printed loads because I knew they were going to a physical space. Brighton doesn't have a lot of physical spaces for zines. So I think since then it has been super online, but I actually think there's something amazing about like holding a printed document and seeing all of that stuff physically together. That is, yeah, I think this concept that you can make something very real out of the thing, like a lot of things that feel like little ideas that won't go anywhere, is really exciting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I also think the most rewarding part is just like, the people that and the talent that I get to discover for like selfish reasons, and because it's just nice to I think it's nice to just know that I'm not alone, because I know that the reason we started the zine was because we felt alone, and now like we've created this huge network of artists that look like us and understand our perspective. And I think that's 100% the best feeling ever. Like I've met some of my best friends like forever through doing Rooted Zine, which it wasn't ever intended, but I think it's just the whole community around it, and learning, even like meeting Lubena. I used to learn about her in university, and so when I got to work with her, I was like, this is so crazy.
The next question is, do you have any favorite, I know like some of you mentioned some in your presentation, but do you have any favorite DIY zines, especially current ones, that you'd recommend, and why?
I feel like I didn't have, I have like, there's a digital trans archive where they have a lot of historic ones, but in terms of like things happening now, I know there's 2 spaces in Brighton where that are currently doing zine workshops, and I just kind of wanted to shout them out because I think Brighton has such a capacity to have an amazing scene around that, but it's quite like small at the moment. But there's the Brighton Zine Network, who do kind of sessions where you can just drop in and like make a zine and hang out. And I think Queer History Now are also doing Zoom workshops at the moment to make zines about like queer experiences in Brighton. I can maybe send a link to those somehow after, but those are what I would want to talk about.
Yeah, we can drop them in the chat box if you. Amber, how about you?
So there's an artist called Diane Crooks, and I recently bought some zines off here. And they're like the one of my favorite zines from her is like one that folds out into a poster, and then one half is like a zine, and then the other half is a poster, so you can put it on your wall. But it's about like, I think it's called like the Black Experience, and it's about, I've got the website here. It's about ways in which art education can be used to tackle issues such as race and unconscious bias. And I can put that in the chat as well. It's really like, it's visually such a nice scene, but the information, and you can tell how much time has gone into it. And she's got other ones. I think she's got one about environmental issues, and she is an artist based in Birmingham. And then there's the Over Here Zine Fest. I don't know if it's been going on, but I think the last one happened in 2018. And that's a really nice zine fest. We can get a lot of DIY zines, and that's, I think, what I was first like physically introduced to a lot of new zines. But I don't think they're going ahead still. But maybe that's just because of the pandemic, hopefully.
Yeah, I do miss physical zine fairs.
Same.
Do you have any advice for anyone who is thinking of starting a zine? Or things that you wish you had known? Do you want to go, Amber?
Yeah. I think so. For me, one of like a challenge, it's quite like an internal challenge of like, I don't feel there's any worth putting something out, when especially when it feels like there's so many zines out there. But I think my advice is that like everyone's perspective is so unique, and like your perspective does add value to conversations. And I just think just emphasizing that your perspective is valuable and unique, and like that shouldn't put you off making a zine, that there's so many other zines out there. I'm trying to think of anything else. I think it's good to always set out an aim for your zine, just because I know that's something that Rooted didn't do, and you kind of just like gone with the flow, which is, it's quite nice at times, but I do wish we kind of like had intentions for it, because now the zine just leads us wherever it wants to go. Like if we knew it was just going to be a side project, and so we could say, okay, we're going to spend a few hours a week on it. Instead, like as the zine grows, we have to grow with it, instead of us putting, I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. How you pick the themes every quarter?
Oh yeah. So we usually, it's just a conversation between me and Fuzia, but that we're getting like, we're really hyper aware about how it's just us two leading it, and it's just our perspectives, our experiences, and they're very different to other people's experiences. So when on our Facebook group that is kind of failing, we always like ask people like, what do you think our next issue should be? What did I freeze? Oh. Yeah, but yeah, we kind of ask people on Facebook, and because that's a bit dead, we're just going on Instagram now to ask people. So that's kind of how we do it.
Very interesting. How about you, Sas?
I think the advice that I would have for people starting out is just to have fun with it. Like, just because it is a format which is informal, it doesn't have to be finished. I think there is so much like that's more enjoyable about making a zine, where you can kind of like relax a bit. I don't know, I'm a real perfectionist, and that's kind of why I'm like make myself do things in zine format sometimes, is because otherwise I will never put it out there. But I think because it is supposed to like, it's supposed to look a little messy, if you haven't been like, you can kind of put an idea out there, see how people react, and then build on it in another zine later. Like it doesn't have to be, this is the last word. And I think that is kind of, yeah, to lean into that like fun aspect of it is really important.
Amazing. Yeah, so for the final set of questions, I asked you to prepare a question for the other speaker. So Amber, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think this question is kind of just something that I often think about. And it's basically like, do you think that zines could ever take over traditional media like magazines? Which is a big question.
Yeah. I don't know, I think our current moment is very tired of conventional media. And I think there is something that we do value about like more immediate information. Like we're no longer going like, oh, conventional newspapers and magazines are going to tell us the truth. And I think a way that maybe previous generations were a little more sure of. We are more like, I saw a tweet about this and I think it's the most correct take I've seen yet. And that's maybe something to lean into. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think that stuff that is more local, more immediate could really be, I think is really what people want to read more of at the moment. My question for you was, I was reading about how you run community events, and I would love to know more about how that process works and how you feel it translates into like a physical space.
Yeah, so I feel like we've done quite a lot of events, and a lot of the time it is like gallery spaces or whoever asking us like, oh, we would love you to do like a zine workshop or things like that. So they a lot of the time it's them dictating it. But we did have one really cool event at Fact, and that was a launch party for a zine, and it was the nicest thing because it was like the theme of the zine was hair, and we got to like translate that theme into like a physical space, and a lot more people came than we ever imagined. There was not enough seats, so that was like a good sign. We watched a film, there was food, there was an exhibition, and then people could buy the zine. And I think what the most important part about that event was like just seeing people, because I think when you do a zine, a lot of it is just online, like sending emails, and it was so nice to see people who had submitted to the zine, seeing their zine in person, and them inviting their friends and family. It just adds like a complete different level to the zine making process, and I think it's like the biggest reward ever. Like, especially like with that zine in particular, we'd spent like months on it, and it was a bit stressful, if I'm honest. So that's why your advice about like having fun with it really resonated with me, because I need to take that more. But yeah, that was like, it was such a nice relief to see it received well, and I think it just makes, I don't know, there's something about just I don't making it bigger, like taking the issues of the pages of the zine and taking them out into a space. I don't know, there's something really nice about it, like for us as zine makers, and then for the people who submit, and to just readers.
That sounds amazing. I would love to do that when we're allowed to again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the two things I miss are zine fairs and zine making events.
Yeah.
I think the last time we went to zine making events, one which I co-ran in Brighton, where I think like a dozen people turned up, and it became more of like a community event. Loads of people had just moved into the area and hadn't met anyone else, so it was a really nice way of them to like talk about the topic of the event, which was environmental issues and racial justice, but also meet new people, because you had to like rotate every time we did a page. So I really miss that. I don't know how to do that virtually, basically. But I guess there are ways. So now I'm going to sort of open it up to anyone who's here. So you have two choices. You can either put your question in the comments, or if you want to yeah, talk to the room, it'd be great if you introduce yourself and say a little bit about why you're here, then ask the question. So yeah, who wants to go first? Yep, Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nathan, he, him pronouns, and I think the reason I'm here is I really do like zines. I like how they bring people together. I haven't really got a question, but I just kind of wanted to say it in that, like Saskia, what you were saying was, you know, a lot of kind of historical media, especially around trans experiences and trans identities, is just so like medical or just written basically by a cis person who's probably never met a real life trans person in the wild. And yeah, I just really wish I'd found zines a lot earlier, like when I was coming out as trans. I think, you know, my kind of transition would have got a lot easier if I don't know, if I'd read a zine which people were talking about quite honestly about their experiences, instead of a lot of heavy medical things that really I wasn't ready to read. So that's what I really like about zines in general. It's kind of like, you know, with them being quite topical as well, sometimes it can be about something that's really personal or really sensitive, but like when you're reading it, I feel like you're kind of in a space to read it, if that makes sense, and to kind of reflect on it a little bit more. And I think that, yeah, I just really like zines, basically. I just like a complete fanboy. I'm like, yeah, I really like them, thank you.
I think that is so important in terms of the medicalization thing, where there is so much. That was kind of my frustration with academia, where you've got to like really justify every point you make, which isn't, I think, how being trans works. Like you don't have like an explanation. You're like, I'm here, I'm trans.